Welcome to What Happens in Vegas. I am your host, Neal Maligno, and today we got a Raiders W. Yes, we finally got a W in the win column. No more O and whatever. We are now 1-3. It doesn't look good. It doesn't sound good. It ain't pretty. It ain't where we wanted to be. It's not what we expected, but it's a win nonetheless, and hopefully one that gets us on the right path here to a much better season. You seen things like I seen things, and there was some stuff really starting to come together. Now, we've talked about it in past weeks following these losses that we've been having, that the Raiders offense has not found balance. It has not made sense. They weren't using Josh Jacobs enough. Some guys weren't healthy. It definitely affected things. But this week versus the Broncos, now, sure, we can blame some of this on the Broncos, all right? Like, the Broncos are not a very good football team. Before this game, their defense was really holding up well. Their offense, not so great. Russell Wilson's been kind of struggling, especially from what we expect from a Russell Wilson type season. So you go into this game, the Broncos are on kind of shaky ground. The defense is pretty good. The offense is The Raiders haven't won a game, so I'm not going to say anything was on a real positive note, offense, defense, whatever. But going into this game, we knew exactly what needed to be done. We talked about it last week in terms of Josh McDaniels has to find balance in this offense. Josh McDaniels has to give Josh Jacobs the ball more. We can't win throwing the ball 50 times to Mac Hollins. Like, it's not going to work that way, right? Like, that can't be the only choice, right? We can't refuse to find Devontae Adams in an offense or target Darren Waller because they're being taken out of a game, quote unquote, by the defense. So all those things were definitely happening in this game in a more positive way. Also, the defense, way better. I was talking about it on Twitter with some Raider fans. What a difference Denzel Perryman makes for this defense. Unfortunately, he got hurt again in this game, concussion. So we don't know. We might not see him next week. Right now, we've seen how things went with like Tua, and he came back too early from a concussion, and things are kind of weird now with that. Although other guys in the Raiders have had concussions this season, came back earlier, and some have taken a little longer. So we'll see how this plays out, how serious of a concussion it was for Denzel Perryman, because it's unfortunate. He definitely 100% makes a difference for this defense. When he's out there, he's making all these big plays, he's making all these tackles, not a lot of stupid decisions, not a lot of stupid things are happening in front of him. And still, everyone else, you could tell it's like it's infectious for these guys. They all start flying around playing like him. I mean, we've seen some big defensive plays this game. So let's go ahead. Let's jump into some of the slides that we have here. And let's look at some things. First things first. Actually, let's do this way. Let's make it a little bigger for you guys. AFC West standings, like I just said, Raiders got their first win. It ain't pretty still. Chiefs are 3-1, leading the division. Chargers and Broncos both 2-2, right ahead of the Raiders at 1-3. Clearly, things are still early. So as like doom and gloom as this is felt, and again, I've spoken about this before, but it's so early in the season that even 1-3 doesn't. First place doesn't look so far away. Right now, it's still early enough where if the Chiefs can lose a couple games, or if we can beat the Chiefs, for instance, the Chargers and Broncos, if they lose a game or two and we win a game or two, like, this all changes within a couple games, right? That's how early in the season things are a little different. Early in the season, you're 1-3, first place is 3-1. Some other teams are 2-2. Is a lot different than first place being 8-1. And you being 2-6 or whatever. Like, it's just more of a less drastic difference that separates you two. So this is a good sign right here. Raiders are still in this, as much as it sounds like we're out of it, and as much as mathematically, statistically, history wise, this has not worked out very much for anybody. The Raiders are still statistically in this, and it's if they can catch this right and really start to step up and be the team that we thought they were going to be to start the season, and some of the other teams in front of them falter a little bit, there's definitely a space here for the Raiders to still do really well in this division. Although, again, stacked division, hard division to win in. So we'll see. Looking at the offense and the defense here, just statistically wise for the game, Derek Carr went for 188, no touchdowns, no interceptions. That sucks, right? Like, that's not fun. That's not what we need from Derek Carr. We need way more than that from Derek Carr. That kind of stat line is more along, why it wasn't a bigger win, of any sort, because again, this is the Broncos defense though. You have to take that into account. The Broncos defense has done really well this year, in general, but even more specifically in the passing game defense. Patrick Surtain Jr. is a beast. They just have a really good team overall. Their pass rush is good. So Carr struggling here. At least he didn't throw up any interceptions. That's the huge thing to take away from this game. Yeah, he got sacked twice. Yeah, he didn't throw any touchdowns, but not throwing interceptions and not costing the team the win. Making them lose because you're making stupid decisions and forcing things. That's a better sign, right? So that's better from Derek Carr, not just play calling better from Josh McDaniels as well. The big thing here, well, if you look at the receivers, Devontae Adams, 9 receptions, 101 yards, where he should be at the top of the receiving stats every week. No touchdown this week. First week without a touchdown for Devontae Adams. Mac Hollins still did his little production, 3 catches, 33 yards. Some of those are big catches too. So still important and big time in special teams as well. So shout out to Mac Hollins. When I say those things, it's no Mac Hollins hate. I just don't think that when you have a Devontae Adams, you have a Darren Waller, you have these other guys, like he shouldn't rank out above them statistically. Josh Jacobs actually had 5 receptions for 31 yards. That's great to see for Josh Jacobs. Again, if you're playing fantasy, Josh Jacobs, what a game. Darren Waller, 3 for 24. This is the most disappointing thing for me in this Raiders offense right now is Darren Waller not getting to produce. I don't know what's happening here. I don't know if this is Josh McDaniel in the play calling, trying to still figure this out. I mean, he's had a history of great tight ends, right? So he has no excuse. We're not giving him any leeway for that. I don't know if this is just defense is really, doubling up on Waller and not making things easy. I don't know if this is an effect of Hunter Renfrow not being in the game because of these injuries and kind of really affecting Darren Waller's availability out there being open. But he should be getting fed enough and producing more than this. This isn't good enough. And then Brandon Bolden, negative yards, whatever. Running game. This is what's the most important offensive stat line of the day. Josh Jacobs, 28 carries, 144 yards over a 5-yard average, 2 touchdowns. Longest was a 43. Josh Jacobs, between his rushing and receiving, absolutely tore it up today. Again, if you're a fantasy football player, manager, if you had Josh Jacobs, how much of a great game this was, how fantastic this was to happen. But if you're a Raider fan, you also know. Like this was a crazy stat line. I believe this was the best game of his career. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was. This is how Josh McDaniels should have been using Josh Jacobs all along, all season. Anything less than this is unacceptable for the Raiders offense. This is who the Raiders offense is. Josh Jacobs pounding the rock, Derek Carr not making mistakes, Devontae Adams, your leading receiver. Darren Waller has to get more involved. Hunter Renfrow will be healthy. That will help. But this is what this offense is. You just have to just run Jacobs nonstop. He is crushing it. This is not a factor of Josh Jacobs getting all the work, and so it's just stats by happenstance because he just happens to get the work. This is a really good running back. If you watch the games, you'll know that. If you see the certain people like PFF, the way they grade, you'll see they graded him very high. This is not just he got the workload, so of course he rushed for a lot of yards. It's not that. Josh Jacobs is really good at football. The interesting thing is he was a guy who didn't get a new contract with the new staff. They did not re-sign him. They actually dropped his option. So this is going to be an interesting thing. The Raiders are finding out how important Josh Jacobs is right now. Josh McDaniels talked about it profusely, I believe, after the game. Derek Carr was throwing all kinds of compliments at Josh Jacobs. He's a key part of this offense. It is what it is. Zamir White did run 2 carries for 24 yards. Was good to see. He had one big run for 22 yards. That was great. I still don't think that this team should go into next year saying, can Josh Jacobs, start Zamir White, pick up a veteran. I think Josh Jacobs should be this team's running back. Obviously, we'll see how much he wants. We'll see what the team can work out. We'll see if the team even tries to. But I definitely believe he deserves it. Shout out to Josh Jacobs for this week. You are the MVP of the offense this week. Devontae Adams did great as well. And again, kudos to Derek Carr for not throwing any interceptions. Josh McDaniels figured it out this week. We'll see if this continues. We'll see if the team follows this up. There's a big game next week. We'll see if the offense can do something similar again. I think we're getting a lot more than this from Derek Carr next week. And again, we're playing the Chiefs, so Derek Carr should have much more success against that defense. From a passing perspective, it's just not a threat, especially like the Broncos were. So the Raiders should find much more success on Monday Night Football next week. So that's what I see here. I'm really looking for a huge game from Derek Carr. And if we don't get it, you can guarantee that's going to be a big loss. Um, Look at the defense really quickly. Amik Robinson, player of the game, right? I mean, on the defensive side of the ball, a guy crushed it. He had that one play where Judy caught the ball on him. He like stumbled in the turf, got caught up in there or whatever it was. And then Judy was making fun of him, doing the like, you're too small. You're not big enough. You're too small of a cornerback to stop me. And after that, Amik Robinson was a man on fire. It was nuts. He did get the fumble that went right into his hands, returned it back for a touchdown. It was a huge play, dude. He couldn't be stopped. He went through so many different people. Even had the offensive lineman on the Broncos dive in for absolutely no reason. I don't know what that was about. I guess maximum effort there. But Diablo, Perriman, as you can see, these guys. Diablo leads in tackles for the game. Again, Perriman had a good game, but like I said, 2 tackles for a loss, but he got hurt. Max Crosby, huge game, 2 sacks, different tackles for losses, QB hits. He was doing everything out there. Trayvon did great. Hobbs, again, another really good game from him. Overall, this was great. I'm still disappointed at the lack of Chandler Jones. Like, where are the QB hits? Where are the sacks? It's really disappointing. I understand that, sacks come in bunches sometimes, and maybe he's doing things that you're not seeing, that he's affecting the quarterback or affecting the game. I hear you. I hear you on that, but it's just not enough for me. Not the way they touted him coming into the year, the money they threw at him. It just doesn't do it for me. The results right now, so that doesn't work. For me, it's not good enough. It needs to be more. Deron Harmon again did pretty good overall. Just a solid game from the defense. In the grand scheme of things, just an overall good game. So that's it for the stats for the defense. Again, PFF, it's not everybody's cup of tea. If it is, just to kind of see who they graded as the highest for this week against the Broncos. Josh Jacobs clearly did extremely well, as we talked about. Devontae Adams had a great game as well, like I said. Dylan Parham, they gave him a pretty good grade, so that's great to see from the rookie. And then Nate Hobbs and Trayvon again, really good game in the secondary. So again, as you see here, overall, like pretty good high scores. You're starting running back, you're starting wide receiver, and offensive lineman. Some secondary guys, like some pretty good grades here from PFF. Again, I know it's not for everybody, how PFF grades, but it's still interesting to see. The other big news of the day is we talked about Denzel Perryman's injury. I have no clue how long he's going to be out for. They haven't said anything. Again, multiple injuries, concussions are weird. We don't know. Are they going to rest him to get through this concussion and stuff? Is it going to be one of those cases where they come back the next game? Who knows? But they did sign Blake Martinez, which may be a sign that they're going to rest him. It's not a guaranteed sign, but it's a sign that it's probably going to happen. Blake Martinez is familiar with Patrick Graham, the Raiders defensive coordinator. He's a tackle machine year in and year out when he's healthy. This is a good move, right? Like, if you're going to have to fill in for Perriman and the guys who are there currently weren't really getting it totally done, they weren't having the same effect, you bring in a guy you're familiar with, a guy who produces at a high level, and a guy who, if healthy, is familiar with the defense, right? So should be an easy transition into the team, should be able to get into the flow of things pretty quickly. Whether Perriman plays or not, it's still good to get more guys like Blake Martinez in there just to help out the linebackers, because that is a spot where when Perriman is out, it does feel a little bit weak. It could use some improvement. Other guys there are kind of young or new to the defensive scheme altogether, so they haven't totally picked it up like Perriman. Again, Perriman is just the best of the group, but hopefully Blake Martinez can bring some of that in. So where do we go from here? Like, overall, again, I mean, the Raiders won a game. We got that off. There's no more of that pressure of when are the Raiders going to get their first win. It's in the books. The offense played pretty well. We found more balance. I would say the best overall offensive game for the Raiders, even though Derek Carr didn't have touchdowns. The thing here is we needed balance. We didn't need more from Derek Carr necessarily. We just needed balance. And so while you might even look at it and say, oh, it was run heavy, Josh Jacobs did all the work. Well, yeah, because that's how the game went. That's how it was dictated. And that's what the Raiders should try to do and dictate in every game. If you could play good defense, run the hell out of the ball, and just drag your opponent that way and tire them out that way, it's way more of a better way to play the game. But again, you're playing the Chiefs next week. We're not going to sit here and do you really think that the Raiders defense is going to blank out Patrick Mahomes? No. Do you think that they're going to stop him from scoring touchdowns? No. Do you think they're going to be able to hold back Travis Kelce from having a great game? Probably not. It's just not how this works. The most teams don't do that. Um, we'll see how it plays. The Raiders got a win under their belt. That's good for them going into a game against the Chiefs. It's a big rivalry game. They understand that the magnitude of this. The Raiders are, like I said, a lot of the guys returned from last year, and the guys who didn't return from last year, the ones who are new, are guys from championship contenders. They were captains on their teams, this and that. So they're all familiar with how important this game is, that they need to step up. And so I'm excited about it. I'm excited about the Chiefs game. I'm hoping it's not a blowout. That's always a possibility when you play against Patrick Mahomes. We've seen him this past week just look ridiculous, like do the craziest things ever, right? And we'll see how we match up. It's a big game in terms of is this Raiders team legit? Is the win against the Broncos just because you play the Broncos, or is it because you're actually turning this corner and figuring it out? Again, the Raiders aren't totally a new team, and while when you change coaches and stuff, you tend to think of like a rebuild. They're not a rebuild. So McDaniels has a couple years, a couple seasons to make this right, and the sooner the better. I'd hate to see this, come off of the Broncos win, get the first win of the season, and then turn right back around and get smacked by the Chiefs. That's not the goal here. It's not the goal. It's not what we would hope to see. So we'll see how it plans out. You guys know I'm always optimistic going into these games. So, of course, the Raiders are who I picked. The Raiders are going to figure it out. They're going to find a way. It's going to require a huge game from Josh Jacobs, a huge game from the defense, just as much as last week, but more. And Derek Carr is going to have to step up. He's going to have to score touchdowns. Like, it just has to happen. He can't throw interceptions. He can't be, made a fool of by the Chiefs defense, but he has to throw for touchdowns. Josh Jacobs having a great game is fantastic. It's needed for this team, but against a Chiefs team, Derek Carr has to also score. He has to score touchdowns. He has to throw touchdowns. So Devontae Adams incoming big week next week. We'll hopefully get Hunter Renfrow back. There's a chance Darren Waller could, have a decent game next week. So we'll see how it goes. But you can bet the Raiders are familiar with this team. Derek Carr is familiar with this team. McDaniels and Patrick Graham and the guys, I believe, will have a pretty good plan drawn up. We'll just see if they can execute and actually overcome Patrick Holmes, Andy Reid type of game. We'll see how it is. It's gonna be a fun one. It's gonna be interesting. It'll say a lot again about the rest of the season, because if the Chiefs win, they're furthering out that lead, and the Raiders are just falling further and further behind. So I know it's early, but with what the Raiders' record is and what the Chiefs' record is, you lose this game, you kind of set the tone, for the rest of the season. If the Chiefs lose it, it's not that big of a deal. It really isn't. But if the Raiders lose it, it's going to be pretty painful. So again, we'll see how it plays out. These games tend to sometimes be close since it's a division game. We'll see what happens. We'll see how this wraps up. Of course, I want to know what you think. I want to know who you thought was our player of the game against the Broncos. I want to know who you think will be the most important player going into our game against the Chiefs. You can drop those if you're watching on YouTube. Drop them in the comments below. I love to check them out. Same as if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. I know you're not on the YouTube, so you're not dropping it in the comments. But if you leave a review, you can put it in the review. Like, you don't have to just talk about the podcast in the review. You can actually put in the review, who you think the most important player of the season is going to be for the Raiders. If you think the Raiders are totally out of it, whatever you want to share, you could either do it in the YouTube comments or on the Apple Podcast review. I will also read those on the air. So if you don't want me to, I guess you could just send me a message that you don't want me to, but I like to share those kind of things. It's cool connecting with you guys in that way, and voicing your opinions and your thoughts. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at Clock Dodgers, CLOCKDODGERS. And I will follow you. Just hit me up when you follow me. Say, hey, Neal, I listened to the show. I'm following you, however you want to say it. But just let me know you're listening to the show. This way I know who you are, and I'll just follow you right back. I like chopping it up with you guys during the Raider games on Twitter and stuff too. So you can do that there, or you can just follow on Instagram, TikTok at What Happens in Vegas. Either one. Whatever is your social media cup of tea. Join me there, whatever it is. But I do appreciate the support. The listeners have been growing like crazy. Raider Nation has been really showing out and showing a lot of love and support. So thank you for that. So to everyone subscribing on YouTube, if you haven't subscribed, please hit subscribe. If you don't even watch on YouTube, just go on there, hit subscribe just to show some love. Again, or if you're on Apple Podcasts and you're listening, please hit subscribe. I know it doesn't sound like a lot to you to hit subscribe or to leave the 5-star review or to turn your notifications on and stuff like that on YouTube, but it does a great deal of help for the show. So it's just a free, quick way to support what we're doing and helping us grow, to get more Raider Nation, involved in what we're doing here. So thank you guys again. As always, I really appreciate it. I'm super grateful and humbled by your support. And I love chopping it up with you guys. Sundays wouldn't be the same without you guys. So I really appreciate it. And that's it for today. We'll see. We'll have another episode later dropping in the week. But for this, the Raiders, you got your first win. I'm excited. I'm excited for the players on the team too. Like, it just felt good. They look genuinely happy for Josh McDaniels, and that was a major thing. Like, the team isn't, when the fans are really unhappy and it feels like things are going off the rails, it's good to see that the actual players, the coaches, the team, the organization isn't feeling that same weight, which it does happen. So it's good that the Raiders aren't in that place right now. So again, shout out to you guys, Raider Nation. What happens in Vegas is Raiders football.